Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Every once in a while you find some pieces of scrap you have laying around that you're not quite sure what to do with, and I finally figured out something to do with these two pieces of triangle wire that I've had floating around on my table for a while. And they are not exactly the same size. I was hoping they were, but one is 2.9 millimeters and one is 2.5 millimeters. But I'm going to try and make them work together to make a kind of an interesting looking ring. I hope it turns out cool. It's going to be sort of a bypass ring with two pieces of triangle wire soldered together. I'm going to taper it a little bit, and I think it should be pretty. And I picked out 3 different stones. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use yet, but I'm going to put a faceted stone in a bezel setting in the middle. But before we do that, I wanted to thank some groups of people. First, my patrons over on Patreon, and I have a new one. Special thank you to Teresa E. for signing up. I appreciate your support. And I think you'll find that the other patrons over there are a really cool, chill group of people with a lot of talent and a lot of knowledge that you can tap into. I hope you enjoy them as much as I have enjoyed them. And thank you to my previous patrons for all of your support and your kind words and everything. I couldn't do this without you guys. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, who I also appreciate, and we just passed 22,100 and some. As far as the number of subscribers I have, and that's awesome and amazing, and I never ever in my wildest dreams would have thought that I'd have that many people following me on YouTube. So thank you for that. Not only do I appreciate you following me on YouTube, I do appreciate the financial support and the nice comments. People who buy me a coffee or offer me super thanks or buy some of my merch or my ebooks. Those kinds of things really help with the rising costs of materials and stuff. So thanks for that. I do appreciate that a lot. All right, well, let's get started on this ring. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on my merch store. The more recent ones have some interesting charts on the back. This one has a wire gauge to inches to millimeter chart, which I find pretty useful. There's another one that has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters. That is also a pretty useful one for me. And there's a few others, but the thing that I really like about them is this dot matrix in the background kind of acts like graph paper for me without being quite as in your face, and so it helps me to keep things sort of symmetrical. So, okay, so here's today's project, and like I said, I had these 2 pieces of triangle wire floating around, and they're not terribly long, but long enough to make a ring out of, I think. This one is 2.9 millimeters wide. This one's 2.5 or so. So they're slightly different size, but I think since I'm going to taper them anyway to the center point here, I want them to be widest out here on the ends and then gradually get narrower in the middle and then widen back out. And I think that'll make for a nice look. And I think it'll make the fact that they're different sizes less obvious. And I don't think anybody will really notice that too much unless they give it a real close inspection. So unfortunately I didn't have enough of one type to do both pieces the same size, but they're close enough, I think, where it'll be fine. I've picked out a few stones here that we could use. We have this blue synthetic spinel, which is very vibrant. We have this garnet, which is a little on the dark side. I'm not sure. And then we got this piece of moldavite, which is 7 millimeters. These are both 5. This is a 7 millimeter one. I bought 2 of these a long time ago. One of them became a basic prong setting video way back when it first started. That's been a very popular video. If you want to see that video, it's just kind of a generic prong setting. Put a link up there for you. But that's the other piece of moldavite that I had that was about the same size. So I could use that. I'm trying to figure out which one of these is going to look the best in this. That might look nice, but I just did something olive green. That also might look nice. Pretty vivid blue. I like garnets, but this one's pretty dark. It doesn't have a lot of fire, so I think I might go with the blue spinel. So let's put these other ones to the side. I'll save that moldavite for some other project since I just did something kind of olive green. Alright, let's see. So for the bezel for that, I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip, which is 4.76 millimeters. That's really tall, so we'll cut it down. I get asked occasionally why I don't get shorter bezel, and I probably should, but it's just easier to keep track of one type. 26 gauge is 0.41 millimeters thick, so it's on the thicker side, which I like. And to create a little step on the inside, I'm going to use some 18 gauge round wire, likely, which is 1 millimeter. And I didn't write that down, I don't think so. But I think our first step, let's see if we can taper these down a little bit. I marked the center of them, and then I thought I would start there and kind of gently file. I'm going to mark which side's the bottom. Interestingly, triangle wire is not the same dimension in all dimensions. And I know some people overseas have told me they can't find triangle wire. So you might have to make it with a draw plate or something. I'm going to mark the bottom side there on this one. And this is the bottom side on this one. Okay. So I might need to brace this particular one to kind of get an even cut on it. Could do it on my bench pin, but I want to do it over here. So maybe I don't need to brace it. I suppose you could put it in a miter vise jig or something if you wanted to. Once I get it pretty close, I'll probably use my rotary tool with an abrasive white silicone wheel to kind of just smooth that out and get it symmetrical again. It's probably time to go over there and start using the rotary tool to even things out before I mangle it too badly. So I'm gonna go over there and do a little bit of that for you, and then I'll probably do the rest off camera, and then do the second one as well, and then we'll get them straightened out and lined up and ready to solder. Apologies for my mess here, but this is a worn down knife edge white silicone wheel. This is what they look like when they start out. But as they get worn down, they get kind of a flat surface on them. I get these ones from Rio. Might do a little bit more cleanup, but that's mostly what I'm going to do. I don't need a huge taper, probably. I bent it a little sideways to help it lay flat, and so that I could try and get those curves up pretty close to each other. And I think it's close enough. It should wick along that seam pretty well. Yeah, I think also having it curved like this will prevent it from flipping up when the surface tension of the solder starts really pulling on it. We'll see, I suppose. Sometimes stuff like that even happens when you plan for it. That's probably a common problem for people, is all of a sudden their solder runs too far and it pulls two pieces together that you hadn't intended. I still have that happen periodically. You know, as a beginner, I had it happen a ton. Okay. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on the dropper bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model. It's a acetylene air torch. It pulls in atmospheric air through there to mix with the gas, which produces a flame that's hotter than a propane torch, but not as hot as oxyacetylene, because it's not pumping pure oxygen into the flame. I'm also going to do something here called pick soldering, where I pick up a little bit of solder on the end of my titanium soldering pick, heat the piece up to the solder temperature, the solder flow temperature, and then touch the piece where I want it to go, and it should jump right on there if I've been patient enough. So I'll put a link up there for you if you want to learn how to do that. The real trick, if you're doing this, is not to stick it in there too soon, because then you'll just be sitting there holding it, waiting for the metal's temperature to reach the temperature it needs to be for it to stick to it. So I jumped the gun a little bit there. There we go. I didn't want to have a huge amount of solder in there, but I did want it to get a seam all the way down. The taper is going to be pretty subtle at this point. I think as we polish it later on, it'll look a little bit more tapered. At least that's my guess. Let's wrap it around the mandrel and see what it looks like. I'm going to start up near the top here, and I'm going to send them to either side of each other like that. This tries to twist on you sideways sometimes. I usually shoot for somewhere between a 6 and an 8. I'm just making random jewelry with the occasional bigger piece or smaller piece, because people who run across pieces that are out of the ordinary size and fit them are always very happy about it. That's one of those things that can sometimes drive a sale, as if you have some rings that people who normally can't find rings that fit them in a store will appreciate. Okay, so I think that's fine. We'll worry about the size a little bit after we get the bezel made, and we can even taper it a little more distinctly now probably. So I'm going to throw that in the pickle for a while. Let's make a bezel for this stone here. Okay, so let's measure this. Well, actually, let's file the end first. If you haven't gotten the filing straight edges down freehand, then it's probably a good idea to use your miter vise jig if you have one of those. Those are pretty handy. A nice straight edge on things. I didn't honestly discover those things until a couple of years ago. Somebody told me about them. And I started doing this in the 90s, so I don't know how long they've been around. Maybe they haven't been around that long. But make a little mark just a bit past where they come together, not much. A skosh. One of the things that, I don't know if you can see this, I have it on 4K, but that's the little scratch mark I made. And when I've taught classes in the past in person, sometimes people would make a scratch like this, like I just did, that's crooked, and they would cut it at the top of the stroke. But you really should cut it where I started that pin scratch to get it more accurate. Get you closer to where you want to be, if that made sense. If you're new to this, be prepared to melt a bezel here and there. That's one of those things that everybody does at the beginning, at least from my experience. Do a little reshaping. Oh, I probably should have cut this in half. Whoops. Oh well, we'll just file it. I think probably, you know, with the exception of doing an open-backed bezel for a faceted stone, this is probably a beginner project. Beginner-ish. I mean, you just have to solder two pieces of wire together and make a bezel and solder between them. So, you know, it wouldn't have to be a faceted stone either, I don't suppose. That was just an arbitrary choice on my part. You also could put a prong setting there. I considered doing a prong setting for this one, but I kind of wanted something sort of simple. If I did a prong setting, I might have used that moldavite because I'd want to get a ton of light to that. Alright, let's see where we're at here. I made calzones last night. That's one of my favorite things to make. They're pretty easy to make, and they almost always turn out really good. You just need a good pizza dough recipe. Okay, that's pretty good size-wise. Let's find some 18 gauge round, and I'm going to make a couple of rings that fit right inside of it to create a step. When I'm making these step bezels, I like to kind of overlap the ring like this. That way I can make it bigger or smaller until it's pretty close to the right size. That's actually pretty close. I usually cut them a little bit bigger than they need to be and snip out little pieces until they fit perfectly in there. Well, you know, perfect-ish. That's sort of oxymoronic, isn't it? Perfect-ish. I had a picture of, when I was trying to decide what project to do today, I had a picture of this sort of mid-century modern wall clock that was very starbursty. And I thought that would make kind of a cool pendant if I did something like that. Because I really like mid-century modern designs for some reason. So maybe that's coming up pretty soon. That sounds like a good idea to you. Tell me in the comments if you think that's a good idea. And then if you like it, I will do it. Oh, and if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit the like button. I know I always forget when I'm watching a video because I get into it. The more likes you get, the more your video gets shown. Apparently I'm a little more chatty than usual today because I'm just kind of babbling about dinner and whatever random thing pops into my head. So this one's a little bit loose, and because I don't want a crack on the bottom where they come together, I'm going to put the looser one on the top, because the other one you have to kind of jam in there and it fits in there pretty snugly. I like to do 2 layers because it lifts it up just about the right amount for most little tiny stones like this, so the pavilion doesn't poke out the back, but it still allows for some light to get in there. Alright, that looks pretty good. I still have a little bit of solder over here, albeit a bit oxidized. You always want to kind of make sure they're sitting down flat when you're doing that, so you don't have a tilted platform for your stone to sit on. You can always use a ball burr or something to reshape it if it happens that you get it in there a little crooked, but it's better if you don't have to do that usually. That is some cobalt blue looking stuff. It's really pretty. I hope the camera can capture that. I don't have too many of these left. I bought a bag of them a long time ago and I really liked them. Yep, that'll need to be filed down, but it's definitely not going to stick out the back, and so that should be good. So, put him to the side for the moment, fish out that other piece. Okay, so let's get this to where I want it to be. I think about a size 8 is good. Though my wife has a finger that's a size 8, so that could mean that it ends up in her armoire. So that's what I'm going to do. But then I'm going to cut these off shorter, I think. So let's go ahead and solder that in there, though, and then we can make some decisions about how long it needs to be on either side. I have something like this in order that none of it can fall off. I like to kind of set it on top of the third hand like that, so neither the band nor the bezel will come out. It's harder for me to screw up. Alright, that looks pretty good. So I still have a little bit of solder over there, and quite a bit of mass in this band, not very much mass in the bezel, so most of the heat's going to get pumped into that band. The third hand acts as kind of a heat sink for it to soak up a lot of heat, so it takes a little bit longer when using a third hand usually to get it up to temperature. See, I'm kind of actively avoiding the bezel, because it'll get hot just by being in proximity to the rest of this and the flame itself. So the way I drew it, I cut off right at where it ended right there. I'm a little scared to cut it off that straight spot though. But let's go a little bit extra. You can't add it on as easily as you can take it off. I think I'm going to have to take it further down. So I may use the saw to try and get it straight up in there. But you probably don't need to watch me do that. So I'm going to go ahead and get that lined up more straight with the very end, so there's parallel. And then I think I'll let it pickle for a while. And we'll get it pre-polished and everything and polished, and then I'll set the stone for you. So I'll be right back. So I got things kind of cleaned up and polished, and I put the stone in there and filed things down to where they need to be. And then I do this a little differently than some. I use the flat side of my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher. Just going to get that laid down over the top of the girdle there. Last step is burnishing, and I'm going to use the rounded outer part of this to rub that top edge where it comes and meets the stone. Okay, once you got that kind of rubbed nice and smooth, we're pretty much done. Last thing I'll do is I'll neaten that up with a blue fine grit and a polishing silicone wheel. Very carefully so as not to hit the stone, but then we'll get some pictures, and yeah, that's kind of what I was shooting for. So I'm pleased with it, you know, for using up some scrap laying around on the table. Produced a ring that it's going to sit kind of like that, which I think is kind of cool. Someone will love that, I think. Don't forget to tell me if you think I made the right stone choice. And, you know, what kind of variations would you do? I could have left it longer and have it bypass either way. That usually looks pretty nice when you do that sort of thing. What do you think? Should I have done a prong setting with that Moldavite? I don't know. I think that would look pretty as well. So, okay, well, I'll get some pictures and put them at the end. All right, well, that was the double triangle wire bypass ring. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you go. And I'd love it if you'd go back to my main channel page and check out some of my other content. I have over 500 videos now, as I've been doing this for 3.5 years at 3 per week. So there's a ton of projects, lots of skills, all different skill levels, and so it's a great resource for people, especially if you're just getting into this. So make sure to check out a few of those videos and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Also, don't forget to check out the video description down below. There's some important links. If you want to find out more about my Patreon, that nice community over there is a great place with lots of cool people. Check it out. There's also a link to my ebook if you want to get one of those. My newest one is 2024's tutorials. It's an electronic book that contains links to all of my videos plus additional information and pictures about each of the projects. So things like would I do it differently if I was to do it again, or did I learn some tricks when I was doing it, whether I liked the project or not, or whether I would you know, ever revisit that one again or not, as well as a materials list and a difficulty rating and some other information. So it's a great way to have a whole bunch of projects at your fingertips and a really nice way to support my channel. So I really appreciate it when people buy that. Thank you for that. And finally, there's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks to keep track of your own projects in. I find them super useful, and there's also some other merch there too, like t-shirts and mugs and a few things like that. So check those out, get yourself something fun, and make sure to come back again. Thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.